The movie opens with a group of women having dinner at a fancy restaurant in 1930, New York City. The women are all married to politicians and businessmen, who cheat on them with an infamous beautiful woman named Mrs. Erlini. The woman is also at the restaurant, and can overhear the wives talking snidely behind her back about how distasteful she is. Mrs. Erlini doesn't care about their sneering remarks. She knows they hate her because she slept with their husbands, and she's okay with it. She doesn't expect them to be her friends. Whenever she goes to a fancy restaurant, she puts the bill on a tab so one of her lovers pays for her. That evening she finds out all the wives closed the tabs their husbands opened, and Mrs. Erlini has to pay with her own money. Not only that, but she's kicked out of the hotel she stays in, and has to pay the bill. Without her lover's money, Mrs. Erlini has to sell all her jewelry to pay her bills. It's humiliating for a woman of her caliber to be brushed off as if she is yesterday's news. She knew that it would happen one day. After all, she is not a young woman anymore. It still hurts to lose her status all of a sudden, because she is no longer what the men want. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, Mrs. Erlini comes up with a plan to maintain her luxurious lifestyle. When she sees the picture of a newlywed couple, she uses some of her savings to buy a one-way ticket to the coast of Italy, to a city called Amalfi. Amalfi is a stunning and romantic town, the perfect place for Mrs. Erlini to start over. In the town, a young girl named Meg goes shopping. Meg is beautiful, with blonde hair and blue eyes. She's the classic American girl who enchants everyone at first sight, including her husband, Robert. At one of the stores, a man suddenly approaches her after staring at her through the window. He's tall and handsome. He's interested in Meg, and shows her a pair of gloves that could fit her perfectly. He suggests she takes off her wedding ring to fit the gloves better, but Meg refuses. She knows the man is trying to flirt with her, and it makes her uncomfortable. The man's name is John Darlington. Robert shows up at the store, much to Meg's relief. Robert knows John, and he introduces Meg to him. Robert is very handsome and charming. Meg's the apple of his eye, and there's nothing he wouldn't do for her. The couple rents a fancy villa in the town that overlooks the crystal-clear Mediterranean Sea. Meg feels like a princess in her castle. As she thanks Robert for renting the place, Darlington watches with greed. He imagines what it would be like to have a woman like Meg on his arm. She would be the perfect accessory for him. Darlington is a womanizer and a famous bachelor. He has no plans of getting married anytime soon, and he's quite happy with his debauched lifestyle. He throws a party at his yacht, and all the rich people in the region are invited. Meg is there, too. Darlington can't take his eyes off her during the party. She looks gorgeous. When her mesmerizing eyes fall on him, his heart jumps in excitement. Unfortunately for him, Robert is always at her side. A few hours into the party, Darlington finds Meg alone. He wonders if she's enjoying the party, and she promises she is. She only wanted a moment of reprieve. He offers her a drink, but she declines it because she doesn't drink. At his bafflement, Meg explains that she was raised by her aunt after her mother passed away. She never met her mother, though she keeps an old picture of her. Darlington compliments her mother's beauty and compares it to Meg's. She feels uncomfortable again at hearing his flattery. She doesn't think it's proper, and asks him to stop. She wants to be his friend, and only that. She loves Robert very much, and he's the only man in her life. Darlington agrees to diminish his flattery, though not to stop. A few days later, while Robert is buying a birthday gift for Meg, Erlini watches him. It's obvious that he cares about Meg very much, with how much thought he puts into the gift. He wants to buy her a piece of jewelry. Robert notices Erlin is watching him, and asks for her opinion. Erlini, ever the seducer, informs him that if she were his wife, she would prefer a fan. She explains why a fan is nicer than jewelry, and convinces Robert to change his mind. Erlini has a way to enchant men through her words and her mesmerizing eyes. After buying the fan for Meg, he goes out to have a coffee with Erlini. Unbeknownst to Robert, his friend group, including Darlington, and a major gossiper Contessa Lucchino, see him getting into his car with Erlini. They feel sorry for Meg, jumping to the conclusion that Robert must have a mistress already. Darlington almost jumps with joy at knowing that now he has a chance to seduce Meg without feeling guilty about it. Later on, Robert leaves Erlini's hotel room, and he doesn't look happy. He looks guilty. At home, Meg tries to guess what he did that day. She has no clue he went out with another woman, and has become the gossip of the moment. As they kiss and make fun of the older rich people, Meg asks Robert to always be honest with her. She doesn't want to be like most couples, who can barely stand each other's presence after years of marriage. Robert promises he won't be unfaithful to her. The next day, Erlini is spending money on new dresses when Meg enters the store. She says her husband's name and catches Erlini's attention. Erlini watches as Meg tries on a hat, and asks for her opinion on a dress she intends to buy. The dress is very sensuous, and leaves little to the imagination. Meg is a bit shocked at Erlini's boldness. When Erlini asks for her opinion, Meg is sincere. She believes the dress is a bit too much, and people will gossip about her. Erlini doesn't care about people's opinions, and she says so. She's confident in her skin, and knows she has the right assets to show. Meg decides to stay silent, since she doesn't agree with Erlini. She's conservative and demure, like a proper lady. Erlini wonders if her husband is there to ask for his opinion, and Meg denies it. She points out that her husband is a conservative man anyway, and wouldn't like the dress. Erlaine smirks and makes fun of Meg in a subtle way that the naive girl wouldn't understand. She implies Meg doesn't know her husband as well as she believes, but Meg disagrees. She loves and trusts Robert. There's no reason for her to worry about his fidelity. As she watches Meg leaving, Erlaine loses her smirk. It's not her style to feel guilty about her actions, but Meg's sweetness brings out a maternal side of Erlaine. She feels bad for the girl. Gossip about Robert and Erlaine is spreading like wildfire. Contessa Lucchino tells everyone that Robert visits Erlaine every day, sometimes more than once. During the evening, though, Erlaine goes out with other men, older and more experienced than Robert. A rich businessman named Tuppy takes more interest in her than the others. The only person not to know about Robert's escapades is Meg, but the gossip will soon reach her. One day, Darlington visits her at the villa. He invites her out for lunch, and she agrees as long as Robert comes with her. Robert receives a call from Erlaine and agrees to meet her in an hour. When Darlington and Meg arrive to invite him for lunch, he lies that he has to work and can't go with them. As he hugs Meg and kisses her, Darlington accidentally bumps into his desk, and a bunch of paper falls on the ground. As he picks them up, he notices a check made in the name of Mrs. Erlaine. It's the confirmation Darlington needs to know that Robert has a mistress. Darlington takes Meg around the town, instead of the club where they will be around their group of friends. Meg is bothered by it, because she doesn't want people to think she's having an affair with Darlington. In the meantime, Robert visits Erlaine again. Her maids are gossiping about him, but he's clueless about the gossip. In her bedroom, Erlaine lies on her bed, and Robert sits close to her, closer than is proper for a married man. He explains that he hates lying to Meg. He doesn't stay long with Erlaine, nor does he do anything with her. He only gives her some money. Erlaine comments that she met Meg, and that she's very pretty. It's obvious Robert is head over heels for Meg, and would do anything for her. Erlaine is accustomed to men being unfaithful to their wives, but Robert genuinely loves and respects Meg. The same can't be said about Darlington. He covets Meg, and is willing to do anything to conquer her. As they walk on the beach, he subtly wonders if Robert is always working, and Meg says he's a determined man. Darlington, then, suggests Robert may have a mistress, but Meg laughs it off. She truly believes in Robert's faithfulness. Darlington feels sorry for Meg's naivete, but not sorry enough to tell her the truth. His game is to play with her until she relents. After her lunch with Darlington, the new gossip in town is that Meg is having an affair with him. Meg and Darlington go to the place where Robert said he would be, but he isn't there. Meg's confused as to why he would lie to her, and Darlington can barely contain his happiness. When she arrives home, Meg looks everywhere for Robert, but he isn't there. A few moments later, he arrives. Meg is suspicious of his whereabouts, and starts wondering if he's lying to her. Later on, they go to an opera with their friends. Erlaine is there accompanying Tuppy. The women start gossiping about her and her debauchery. Meg is curious about the woman, especially when Robert mentions meeting her, after saying he didn't know her. To make her even more suspicious, when she points out to Robert that she was the lady buying a sensuous dress, he comes to her defense, saying that Meg only doesn't understand Italian fashion. Meg's confused by her conservative husband's defense. She was sure he would criticize the woman too. Erlaine keeps looking at the stand where Meg and Robert are. She knows they are gossiping about her, and the fact that Meg is there bothers her. Tuppy advises her not to care about their gossip, and Erlaine agrees. She only complains that the older women must be slandering her to Meg. She's bothered by that, for some reason. Tuppy notices her discomfort and goes out with her. Robert looks slightly bothered by the sight. Erlaine surprisingly has fun with Tuppy. He's smart, charming, and quite funny. When they arrive at her villa, he invites himself for a nightcap, showing confidence. Erlaine enjoys it. Back at Robert and Meg's villa, Meg can't stop gossiping about Erlaine. She doesn't want her to show up at her birthday party, afraid people will be shocked and offended by her presence. As she talks, Robert loses his patience with her and comes to Erlaine's defense again. Meg is confused as to why he keeps defending her. Robert gets annoyed and asks her to change the subject. Before she can start questioning him, he gives her the fan he bought for her, the one Erlaine suggested. Meg loves it. The new couple lovingly kiss, forgetting all about Erlaine and her affairs. When Tuppy and Erlaine are alone, he proposes to her. He wants to be married to a woman like her, without necessarily having feelings for her. He already married twice because of passion. He wants to try something new. Erlaine laughs and brushes him off, but he insists. He's rich and would give her a good life. Erlaine explains that she already tried married life, and it didn't work for her. She felt stuck, as if she were in a cage with no way out. The man she married wasn't bad, and he was unlucky to marry her. Tuppy tries kissing her, but she stops him, saying that she doesn't like the taste of tobacco. The older man puts his cigarette out and promises he will quit. After he leaves, Erlaine smokes and contemplates his proposal. She has been having affairs for years, depending on the money of her lovers to survive. It's not a guaranteed life. Tuppy isn't a bad man. He would make a nice husband. Moving on, Meg's birthday party arrives. As she organizes the house, Darlington visits her. Robert isn't home again. Darlington gives her an expensive bracelet as a gift, even though the invitation said no gifts were needed. He says he bought it as a friend, but even Meg knows he has second intentions. Darlington asks if Robert is off on another errand, a question that strikes Meg as odd. When the florist needs to be paid, Meg explains that he will have to wait for Robert to arrive home. Darlington quickly seizes the opportunity to show Meg that her husband isn't the saint she believes him to be. He suggests she signs the check to give to the florist, knowing that she will find the checks Robert sent to Erlaine. Before Meg leaves to do it, Darlington says that if she ever needs a friend, he will be there. He pretends to care about her feelings, even though he knows seeing Robert's proof of unfaithfulness will hurt her deeply. He's a selfish man, who only thinks of his own needs. Meg finds Robert's checks to Erlaine, and it crushes her. She can't believe he has been lying to her face all this time. She doesn't understand why he would cheat on her. They have been married for only a year, and they are still in their honeymoon phase. It's absurd that Robert would find a mistress during their vacation. Meg is completely distraught. She calls Condessa Lucchino for comfort, and the old lady advises her to not take Robert's betrayal so personally. It's normal for men to cheat. Meg only has to pretend she doesn't know, and move on with her life. Meg can't believe she will become what she feared. A lady who pretends not to be hurt by her husband's unfaithfulness, and gossips with her friends all the time. Robert promised her they would never become such a couple, yet there they are. Robert meets with Tuppy to play golf, and asks him not to bring Erlaine to Meg's birthday party. It would make things awkward. Tuppy's surprised that the gossip is true. Robert is cheating on Meg with Erlaine. He laughs and says that Robert will have to fight him for her affection. He believes she's his perfect match, and wants to marry her. Robert is befuddled and offended by Tuppy's implication. He has no clue what he's talking about. He has never had an affair with Erlaine. When the lady in question arrives to meet with Tuppy, Robert grabs her to talk to her. He wants her to leave immediately, before the gossip arrives in Meg's ears. He explains that people think they are having an affair. Erlaine laughs in disbelief at the irony of the situation. Erlaine and Robert do share a secret, but it's nothing related to romance. As they argue, a man friends with Robert eavesdrop. Erlaine tries to argue with Robert that he paid for her to stay there for the whole season, but he wants her to leave. He doesn't care if he needs to pay for her to go somewhere else. Erlaine is offended, and wonders if Robert is afraid that their secret will come out because of his family's name. Robert scoffs and finally discloses the truth. Erlaine is Meg's mother, who left her daughter as a baby. Meg's father, to spare her feelings, lied that Meg's mother passed away. For over 20 years, Erlaine stayed away from Meg. When she found out she married a rich man, she decided to show up. Robert accuses her of only worrying about money, not Meg's feelings. She's a mercenary. Erlaine's offended, especially because Robert was always nice to her. He's nice and polite, but when it's about Meg's well-being, he won't jeopardize it. The only reason he paid Erlaine was to prevent her from telling Meg the truth. He fears it will crush her. Robert leaves after his argument. Erlaine doesn't know what to do. The older man who was eavesdropping asks if Meg is truly her daughter, but she denies it. In the meantime, Meg complains about Robert to Condessa. She feels dirty. The older woman suggests she goes shopping to forget about her pain, and Meg agrees. She splurges and buys a lot of things to try and feel better. It doesn't work. She's heartbroken. When her party is well underway, she cries in her bedroom. She has no desire to attend the party, not when everyone knows that she was betrayed. She could never put on a false smile and pretend she is all right. It's not her way. Still, at some point, she will have to go down. If people wish to humiliate her with their pitiful smiles, she will give them something else to talk about. Meg puts on the same dress Erlaine was using the first time she met her. The one she thought was too sensuous. When she comes down, people are shocked. Meg looks stunning, and the dress fits like a glove. The only person not too happy about it is Robert. When he questions her about it, she wonders if his lady friend didn't teach him anything about Italian fashion. Robert is confused, but Meg quickly surmises that she saw the checks. Robert's blood runs cold. To make things worse, Tuppy brought Erlaine to Meg's party, despite Robert asking him not to, and she is wearing the same dress. Darlington sees Erlaine on the balcony and mistakes her for Meg. When he notices who she is, he quickly proposes a scheme for her. He wants her to convince Robert to leave Meg so that he can have her. Erlaine is confused, but soon understands that Darlington believes the gossip about her and Robert. She informs him that he should be more careful about what he believes. Meg isn't happy or excited about her party, but as Condessa advised her, she pretends. Robert finally catches up to her, but before he can say anything, Meg sees Erlaine wearing the same dress. She can't believe he had the gall to invite her to her birthday party and buy the same dress for her. It's disgusting. Meg feels cheap and dirty. Darlington sees her sitting by herself, looking sad, and she explains that she will have to change. He says that Erlaine looks ridiculous in the dress because she's old, while Meg looks stunning. Meg wonders why Darlington didn't warn her about Robert's infidelity. She trusted him as her friend. Darlington never wanted to be her friend. He kisses her, and she reciprocates for a moment. Not that she likes him, but deep down she wants to take revenge on Robert. When she remembers that she's not that kind of person, she pushes him away and runs. Darlington follows her. He finds her in the garden, under the balcony. He confesses his love for her and says that he has loved her since the first moment he saw her. He wants to give her everything. Meg feels moved by his words. In her moment of fragility, the only thing she wants is to feel loved. At the same time, how can she believe a man such as Darlington, a known womanizer, when she trusted Robert and he ended up hurting her? It's a recipe for disaster. Before she can answer, Robert shows up, but only sees Darlington. He asks if he saw Meg, but Darlington disagrees. Meg and Robert aren't the only couples being gossiped about. Tuppy's being called a fool for falling for Erlaine. He proposes to her again, offering all his money, and she doesn't know what to say. Tuppy decides for her. He takes her hand and puts his ring on it. The man who eavesdropped on Robert and Erlaine tries to tell everyone about a dream he had, of Erlaine being Meg's mother. Nobody listens to him. It's too unbelievable, despite the two of them looking alike. Darlington asks Meg to come away with him, but she can't. Robert finds Erlaine, and he isn't happy with her presence at all. She asks to talk to him in private about Darlington, and they go to his office. It's a bad choice. Erlaine warns him of Darlington's intentions, but Robert dismisses her. He doesn't think Meg is capable of betraying him, and knows the main problem is his lies. He makes another check for Erlaine to disappear from their lives. She wants to see Meg one last time, but he doesn't want her to get any closer to Meg. What they don't know is that Meg is already there, watching as Robert hands her another check. It's the confirmation she needed for Robert's infidelities. Meg leaves the party and goes to their bedroom to drink alone. She's so sad and lost. Erlaine goes after her to say goodbye to her daughter again, but the room is empty. There's only a letter addressed to Robert on her vanity table. In the letter, Meg says that if Robert loves Erlaine, he should be with her. Robert goes to their bedroom calling for Meg, and Erlaine quickly locks the door. She stays silent as Robert slanders her, thinking she's Meg. He calls her old, selfish, and distasteful. If Erlaine doubted Robert's love for Meg, she has the proof now. She always prided herself on being a seductress, but Robert doesn't see her appeal at all. Erlaine feels guilty for ruining her daughter's marriage for her own selfish purposes. She admits to herself that she didn't show up to see Meg again. She went there to blackmail Robert in exchange for money. Erlaine feels ridiculous for acting like this, at her age. After Robert leaves, believing that Meg only needed a moment alone, Erlaine goes after Tuppy. She asks him to keep Robert distracted. Erlaine goes after Meg. She knows she's with Darlington, who manipulated the fragile girl to feed his ego. Luckily, Erlaine finds her before she can do something she will regret. She doesn't tell the truth to Meg, only that she's a family friend to Robert, and that's why he gave her some money. Meg doesn't believe her, but Erlaine promises Robert is faithful to her. They go back and forth, with Erlaine giving Meg advice to not ruin her life before it's even started. In the end, they don't have a lot of time because Darlington arrives with his friends, including Robert. Erlaine hastily helps Meg hide. As the man talks about love and marriage, the women eavesdrop. Unfortunately for them, one of the men finds Meg's fan, and Robert recognizes it. He jumps to conclusions and starts looking for Meg in the boat. Darlington has no idea what Meg's fan is doing there. After all, she rejected him at the party. Robert believes he's lying and punches him. Before things can escalate, Erlaine shows up, much to Tuppy's surprise and embarrassment. She pretends the fan is hers and distracts them while Meg hastily escapes. Erlaine gives Tuppy the ring back, knowing she hurt his feelings. He goes away after his humiliation. Robert goes home early in the morning, and Meg is there waiting for him. They apologize to each other. Robert explains what happened at the boat, and Meg is shocked. She can't bear the thought of Erlaine taking the fall for her. She's about to admit to Robert that she almost cheated on him, but the phone rings. Erlaine also arrives at their place to give the fan back. While she waits for Robert, she takes one of Meg's pictures with her. Robert isn't happy to see her there. He wants her to leave. He doesn't believe for a second Erlaine has maternal feelings for Meg, not after staying away for 20 years and blackmailing him. Before he can kick her out of the house, Meg shows up. Robert has to take a call and leaves the two women alone. Meg wants to tell Robert the truth, to help Erlaine with Tuppy. She doesn't think it's fair to Erlaine that she took the fall for her mistake. Erlaine disagrees. It's the only good thing she ever did for Meg, and she will stand by it. Erlaine asks her to promise not to tell Robert her secret, and Meg swears on her mother's name. Erlaine is shocked to hear Meg still holds her mother to high standards. She loses her nerve to share her secret with Meg. She doesn't want to ruin the sacred view she has of her mother. Erlaine can't believe she was capable of making such a selfless, loving daughter. Meg doesn't hold any grudges for her anymore, and hopes she will see her again someday. Erlaine meets Robert one last time and promises she has no desire to take away Meg's view of her mother. In her mind, her mother loved and cared for her. Before she leaves for good, she hands him a check with all the money he gave her. Robert and Meg finally talk and solve the misunderstandings. They love each other more than anything, and nothing will ever change that. On her plane to go somewhere, Erlaine finds a fan. It's the one that belonged to Meg. Tuppy, who was hiding next to her, explains that Meg insisted he gave it back to her. She explained the situation to Tuppy. He apologizes for jumping to conclusions and wonders if she will still marry him. Erlaine is happy and emotional that he didn't give up on her. She agrees to marry him, and the two of them go away together with no destination in mind.